Hi there and welcome to our last lesson for period 3 of APUS history. We're tackling the skill-based lesson, continuity and change in period 3. I'm your APUSH lady boss, and go ahead and click down in the description if you would like to grab some guided notes to follow along as you watch this video. So our learning objective is to explain how the American independence movement affected society from 1754 to 1800. So first, we're going to make sure that we understand what is this skill or this reasoning process, continuity and change. We're going to look at a few examples of this in period 3, and then we're going to look at some sample prompts that the College Board has used in the past to address or evaluate this skill in Unit 3. So what is continuity and change? It's one of the reasoning processes chosen by the College Board. So the three are comparison, which we looked at in period 2, causation, which we looked at in period 1, and now continuity and change over time. These are the three skills that are the focus of the essays and also of the short answer questions. So these describe the cognitive operations that you're required to do when you are completing the AP exam. These skills are also incorporated into multiple choice questions. It's just easier to teach them when we look at essays. So specifically, the College Board wants you to be able to describe or provide the characteristics of continuity and change, explain patterns, and explain the historical significance of those patterns. And by explaining, it takes it a step further than describe. You need to provide additional information. It requires analyzing the relationship or the process, and it includes analysis of motivations or the reasons for the relationship. So describe is more of like an entry-level skill. Explaining is being much more thorough in the way that you explain or describe what is happening. So let's take a look at some examples of continuity and change in period 3. One of the lesson that is most closely linked to this objective is the influence of revolutionary ideals. If you're not familiar with how the revolutionary ideals impacted society, I encourage you to check out this video linked above, and hopefully you'll feel more comfortable then addressing the skill. So what we're going to look at is how the revolutionary ideals impacted 3 areas: slavery, political participation, and roles of women. And I have already incorporated a few examples of this. So after the revolution, and even during the revolution, we see that there is an increase in anti-slavery sentiments in northern states. We see areas like the Northwest Territory banning slavery. We see other states beginning to abolish slavery in their state constitutions. And so this is something that we would mark as a change, something that over the time period has changed. Now, the slave trade continues on until 1808, and enslavement of Africans continues through all southern states. And so we would call this a continuity. And so even within this one particular topic, slavery, we are seeing some continuities and some changes. Now, if we shift to political participation, what we see is that in order to participate in government, the requirements are still that you must be an adult, white, male landowner. And so that is going to be a continuity. Those characteristics do not change in this time period. However, we do see separation of church and state. And so that is a change. This is something that is going to be a marked change then after the revolution. But we still continue to see a lack of suffrage for women and African Americans and American Indians as part of the federal law. And so even though New Jersey temporarily grants women the right to vote, this is federally, we see this maintaining as a continuity. So then our last topic here as an example is going to be the role of women. If you remember learning about the Republican motherhood, this is the idea that it was the duty of mothers to educate their sons to be good citizens and to participate in government and to be the future leaders. Therefore, women needed an education. So we see increased educational opportunities for women, especially in the northeastern states. And so this is an example of a change. However, if we look at Black women, we see the continued enslavement of Black women primarily. Now, the northern areas did abolish slavery. Some of that was more gradual. but there was much fewer enslavement of Black people in northern states anyways. And so for the majority of Black women living in America at this time, there is continued enslavement, which means it's a continuity. We also see changes in the roles of American Indian women. So American Indian women in some tribes have played a role in the political power structure. Some of these tribes are matrilineal. And as American Indians engage in more warfare against the United States during this period, we see the men in the tribe who engage in the warfare taking more power. And so some American Indian women experienced a loss of political influence. And so we would call that a change. So as you can see from just going through this, if we were to look at the influence of revolutionary ideals and try to decide, was there changes or continuities, there's numerous examples for both. So in the past few years, the College Board has tested on this skill, continuity and change, in both the DBQ and the LEQ. So what I want to do is just read through a couple of these prompts and then give you an example of how you want to make sure that you are addressing this reasoning process. So the DBQ in 2017 was to evaluate the extent of change in ideas about American independence from 1763 to 1783. So how much did ideas of American independence stay the same, and how much did they change? As far as LEQ, continuity and change over time tends to be one of the skills that they test on more frequently. So in 2019, they asked students to evaluate the extent to which ideas of self-government influenced American colonial reaction to British imperial authority. So how much did this idea change American reactions? In 2018, they asked students to evaluate the extent to which commercial exchange systems, such as mercantilism, fostered change. So did mercantilism change the North American economy, or did it remain the same? And then last, in 2015, this is an older style prompt. We would actually call this more periodization, but I think as you'll read the prompt, you'll see it's very tied to continuity and change as well. Evaluate the extent to which the 7 Years' War, French and Indian War, marked a turning point in American relations with Great Britain, analyzing what changed and what stayed the same. So they use the idea of a turning point in the prompt, and that language has not come back up since this year. However, they are still asking what is changing in the relationship as a result of the French and Indian War, and what is staying the same. So here's a few of my main tip when you get a prompt like this. The best essays will incorporate both changes and continuities. So if you can come up with examples of what is changing and staying the same, the best type of essay is going to use both. Now, if you can only come up with one idea, changes or continuities, it's perfectly fine to write that essay. But if you know both, that is the best way. So here, if we take the DBQ prompt, evaluate the extent of change in ideas about American independence, and we use this thesis formula, go ahead and use my thesis writing video to help you understand this formula more in depth. But if we include the counter argument in our evidence and then the argument, you can see how incorporating both continuities and changes will help you to write a very solid analytical essay. So here's an example essay or an example thesis where you see both of those things present. Despite most colonists identifying as part of the British Empire, that's the continuity, at the beginning of the movement for independence, because of continued implementation of new economic policies and reduced colonial political autonomy, many colonists began to form, see that's change right there, began to form a new American national identity and sought independence from Britain. So once again, if you are able to incorporate both of these ideas, continuity and changes, in your essay, you are way on track for writing a very solid essay for your AP exam. So I hope this lesson helped you to better understand how the American independence movement affected society and understood the reasoning process of continuity and change over time. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.